Welcome to part 2 of the Atheist Alpha course. For those just joining or not familiar with part 1, the Atheist Alpha course aims to give you a blueprint for modern living and the insight and tools you need to have a great life without the need for a false deity. It uses ridicule as a means of doing this, although in some ways we do not need to ridicule religion, it ridicules itself. In this section we have the similarities between religion and totalitarianism and the threat of theocracies, and also evolution, science and reason. Part 3 covers original sin, free will and morality, explains why religious moderation is bankrupt and as an atheist test, and the final part 4 puts things in an historical context, explains why secularism without religion is the way forward, and suggests what you can do to help. Let's look at the similarities between totalitarianism and religion. If you are religious, you are willing to give your allegiance to an ultimate redeemer and to admit that there is divine supervision. You have to submit your will to a higher power, be obedient, and accept great things can only be done or had if you place yourself under such an infallible leadership. Further, because God is not around, you have to be willing to admit human beings can be the interpreter of this divine figure. If you are a Catholic, you can't follow Jesus of Nazareth, you have to follow his vicar on earth. The Pope is infallible and has divine authority. Similarly, the Quran is the perfect word of the creator of the universe. Reject it and you're going to hell for all eternity. Yet his will has to be interpreted by fellow primates. Again, different sects and mullahs. This is why we have a world balkanized by different faith claims. Separate moral communities with much of the Middle East organizing their lives with Iron Age philosophy and modern technology. Men used to believe in the divine right of kings, and if the religion became too much of an inconvenience, well, you could just start a new one. The Anglican Church is founded on the family values of Henry VIII. So let's look in detail at the similarities between totalitarianism and religion. So what happens when faith has been subordinated to a political ideology? George Orwell said that all totalitarianism must at its heart be theocratic. Totalitarianism is a surrogate of religion. In all such regimes, like all religions, there must be some unchallengeable assumptions that must be taken as statements of faith. Like all religions, dictators demand to be both respected and feared. Like religions, they are cultish, irrational, and quasi-religious. Some things, in Italy it was Mussolini and the Duce is always right, the cult of the Führer, the worship of Mao with his little red book. The Japanese emperor was an actual god. Communism is little more than a political religion. At the heart of its apparatus of repression and terror lurks a rigid ideology to which generations of men and women are sacrificed. Communism even covers the supernatural and miracles. Stalin could produce 2 or 3 crops a year thanks to collectivization. North Korea is the most worshipful country on earth. The birds apparently sang in North Korean upon the birth of Kim Jong-un. If you think of totalitarianism in that way, just like religion, certain things not available for debate, dogma, faith, unchallengeable statements requiring no reasoning, independent of evidence, evil foes, and most importantly, heretics who can be punished if they challenge the status quo, you won't go far wrong. You don't need to look as far as North Korea for an infallible supreme leader. Just look at what is happening in Russia now. Putin has an 80% approval rating, destroying the free press and media, punishing dissenters, and, like any religious figure, all good things are down to him and the bad things are the result of the evil Antichrist, in this case the pernicious West. So the cult of the infallible leader is nothing new. One thing religions say to distance themselves from totalitarian regimes is that you need the religion to provide moral guidance and should rely on God and the values of the given faith for absolutely incorruptible morality. In other words, that morality in totalitarian regimes work for man, not God, and therefore can be corrupted. Yet despite the best efforts of the Catholic Church to portray Adolf Hitler as an atheist, the reality is he was a Catholic who never renounced baptism. Most Nazis were good Catholics. In Mein Kampf, Hitler states clearly he was doing God's work, and the first treaty he made was with the Vatican, dissolving a powerful Catholic party in Germany in return for the Vatican's total control of religious instruction in schools in Germany. If you claim you are Catholic, you claim Hitler as one of your flock. The Pope and Muslims at the time of World War II supported Hitler with his pogrom on the Jews. The Catholic Church never repudiated their blood curse, their belief in the collective Jewish guilt for the crucifixion of Jesus, until 1964. That's condemning all Jews and countless generations of innocents, thereby encouraging persecution and pogroms through the ages. The SS had God mis uns, God is with us, on their belt buckles, and something like 75% were practicing Catholics or Protestants. They killed people by the million because they were used to absolute, unquestionable authority. The zenith surely came when an ex-Nazi Youth League member became Pope. So this is a textbook lesson on how the Church can provide no real help with absolute or objective morality. For them, as us, it is all relative, and it is not confined to Christianity. Just like Hitler believed he was doing God's work, Muslims fly planes into buildings because they believe they have absolute moral authority with the supreme leader on their side. Where people follow a political ideology or religion without question, humanity gets hurt. The only people we should be scared of are those who say they know all the answers, who claim to know the mind of God. Then we should be very scared. We have to disassociate faith from virtue, faith in political or religious ideologies. Many people blindly followed Stalin because he inherited a population that was so servile, so credulous and superstitious, he would have been a fool not to take advantage of it. So, you indoctrinate, you set up an inquisition, have heretic hunts, produce miracle harvests. This same regime murdered millions of peasants in the 30s for the greater good in the long run, while Stalin led them to the promised land. In Stalin and Khmer Rouge and Mao, God is made in man. On religion, I always remember Stalin's quote, "A lie told often enough becomes the truth." And that's the same problem here. People have had the lie told so often they have blind faith in a political theory or a religion, and because they try to get their morality from fairy tales or ideologies, this is why our world is so messed up. Obey me without thinking or question is the common theme. By contrast, atheists are adamant for doubt, conditioned to be skeptical, and what we know is nothing compared to what we have yet to know. So to recap, if you want a society to believe in either a God or a great leader, you tell a young and naive mind how great the God or leader is, indoctrinate them through churches or schools and assemblies, have holidays praising God or the leader involving things that make the kids happy, teach songs or games to embed your religion or your politics, show them other great adults share your belief, and threaten heretics with punishment, when all we really need to do for a healthier society is to encourage children to think for themselves and question what they hear. Religious atrocities are commonplace, not just historical like the Crusades or the Spanish Inquisition. There are Catholic priests hiding in the Vatican now after denouncing the Tutsis in Rwanda from the pulpits and encouraging genocide. More recent as this video was produced include last month's slaughter of 132 school children in Peshawar, Boko Haram kidnapping schoolgirls and killing non-Muslims, the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris where people were killed for drawing a cartoon. This is because people with their version of the absolute truth on their side can do immoral things. The moment you declare a set of ideas to be immune from criticism, satire, derision or contempt, freedom of thought becomes impossible. So it does not matter whether the regime of absolute power is fascist, communist or religious. Having no right to free speech or to criticize means slavery to the regime. There are big threats today with deadly enemies who mean us harm. What will appease the desire to be a martyr for God? It is a root fallacy to say that the cause of terrorism is our resistance to it. It is masochistic and capitulationist to appease such people. We have a huge Islamic caliphate which doesn't recognize borders, and we will soon have Iran, a theocracy with nuclear weapons. The Cold War worked on the basis of mutually assured destruction. But what happens if the people with their fingers on the button do not fear death and want, say, the destruction of Israel or the great Satan America? What happens when a state which is in possession of the word of God also acquires nuclear weapons? What reasonable argument will convince the irrational? Particularly, say, a mullah whose position is threatened by sanctions, by a drop in the oil price, or a discontented, tech-savvy young populace? Well, we're about to find out. Only by calling religion for what it is now, myth and superstition, can we hope for a better tomorrow. The only solution to irrationality is the rejection of it, and that's why you should fight for science and reason. Religion or totalitarianism requires too much of a sacrifice for the mental and intellectual freedom to be tolerated. Religion may have noble intentions, but mental, intellectual and moral freedom is much more important. You should not be prepared to sacrifice the freedom it implies. It's not worth it. You gain much more by repudiating that and standing to your full height and not pretending you are a slave. Question everything and think for yourself. Which is why you should look at the alternative to political or religious absolutism: evolution, science and reason. Religion has been on the back foot since the Renaissance and the development of science. If you already possess the absolute truth in the Word of God, there is no need to search for the truth. Religion pretends to know everything and have an explanation for it. The default: God did it. By contrast, science is the journey towards truth. Science adjusts its views based on what it's observed. Faith is the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. Religion is not under attack, it's being called out, since Galileo was called a heretic and before. Despite the constraints of the established church order opposing every step of the way, in the end, it never stopped our natural curiosity. Our need to know facts is too strong. People at first thought we lived on a flat plate, then they thought the sun orbited around the earth, then we developed telescopes and started to understand the cosmos and realized it was the other way round. We invented microscopes to study bacteria and realized through biology that plagues were not a curse from God. Then, thanks to Darwin, we came to understand evolution, random variation followed by non-random survival. Although evolution is a theory, not a fact, it has so much evidence we take it as a fact, just as we accept the theory of gravity or we accept the earth goes round the sun. We don't debate the stork theory of reproduction seriously. We don't give equal time to astrology versus astronomy. We don't have balance there. In the same way, alchemy gives way to chemistry, and where religion ends, philosophy begins. In contrast, the Bible already has a source of science, the 7-day Genesis. Creationism, like all religion, is rigid, based on works of fiction, asserted, insisting, twisting and torturing. Richard Weinberger is a physicist who says that religion is an assault on human dignity. Religion starts with a presupposition, then tries to prove it. How did the universe come into being? Don't know, so God did it. Is ignorance a statement of fact? The reality is there is nothing supernatural to the universe, just things we don't understand yet. If you believe in a God that created the universe, you're implicating him in an incredibly destructive and wasteful plan, with one sun exploding every second and 98% of the species on the planet having already become extinct. The arrogant assumption that the universe, some 400 billion stars in our galaxy alone, and 170 billion galaxies that we know of so far, some colliding into each other, was made just for us on this tiny speck of a planet. All this was apparently set in motion and designed to produce one race of beings, primates, with the intention that if they make the right offerings, that they will live forever. It's incredibly self-centered and called anthropocentrism, the idea that the world and the universe belongs and exists for us. God did not make us in his image. We made God in our image. We are literally made of stardust, carbon atoms that are only formed in the belly of stars. Just because we don't understand some things yet, that is the reason to do science. Religion has two last bastions. Firstly, religious people say, even if you accept Darwinism and evolution, you can go all the way back and are still left with a primitive bacteria, So who produced that? Who produced the first cell? It must have been God who started life in the first place. Darwin did not think we could understand the origin of matter any more than we could understand the origins of life. Yet we understand matter now, and we in our lifetime hope to understand the origins of life. We can't make life yet, but scientists are working on it. The understanding of the genome, development in molecular biology, and we hope to bridge the gap from chemistry to biology shortly. And secondly, religious people say that even if you don't believe in creationism and you accept there was a Big Bang, well, who created that? It must have been God who created the universe. Well, isn't it better to say we don't know or understand yet, but we're working on it, rather than just say it's God? Because if you say it was a God, then you get to the point of who made the God who made the universe. It's called infinite regression and pointless. There are people working on hypotheses now of something from nothing, parallel universes or multiverses. We may never solve all these mysteries, but it is better than believing in the supernatural. As an alternative, faith is a willingness to assume what you must prove. You must be able to come before an educated audience and say, it's true because it is in the Bible or the Quran, and because it's in the Bible or Quran, it's true. That is not evidence, it is faith. By contrast, science is about change. You observe, you test a hypothesis, and debate. Good science changes as we learn more. Reality is liberating, but challenging the ridiculous is not allowed in religion. So what matters is not what you think, but how you think. All our discoveries come from science and philosophy. Wisdom does not come from faith or revelation. A view from the Hubble telescope is awe-inspiring, not myths about a burning bush or turning water into wine. There are those of us who say we owe our existence to the laws of physics and biology, and those who are still conceited and arrogant enough to say they are here as a pinnacle of grand design. We are the product of 4 billion years of evolution, and we will be different again in another 4 billion. In evolutionary terms, we have only just walked off the savannah, and our brains are still struggling with some of the discoveries we have made. The reason to do science is because we don't understand everything yet. It has been proved an electron can and does exist in 2 places at the same time. Space curves, and time travel is theoretically possible, that nothing weighs something. These facts defy common sense. Our brains are not equipped for accepting them. Yet as we evolve, we need to go beyond ourselves. We need to accept that as pattern-seeking, barely evolved primates who sought explanations, we made gods, not the other way round. Ultimately, atheists would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. Thanks for watching. Part 3 covers original sin, free will, and morality, and explains why religious moderation is bankrupt, and it also has an atheist test. Part 4 puts things in an historical context and explains why secularism without religion is the way forward and what you can do to help. Please subscribe below for the other part shortly, and contact us through Facebook or email us. Thank you.